Hey, what's up, people? So, yeah, as I promised, I actually went to a tournament and did some minor deck modifications here and there. I actually went to a tournament yesterday, which was let's see what is today. Sorry, April 4th, I believe, which was a Monday. So yeah, went out to my locals on a Monday and yeah, played some modern and did pretty well. And yeah, gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about some changes I made to the deck. It's very minor, so not too many changes to the deck, but I was asked to talk about siding, and I'll do that towards the later part of the video and kind of give you some ideas on how to side a certain matchup. And yeah, we'll go from there. So um, let's go ahead and go through the deck profile first. Since it should be pretty quick, not much has changed, honestly. It's only made like one or two card changes, and I've still been rocking it, and I haven't really been out, able to go out and play recently. So now that I've gotten a chance to go out and actually test some of the changes I made in the deck, I'll give you some of my thoughts on the cards I decided to put in and try out. So in terms of the profile, I'm still running 4 opt. 4 prismatic here. And then the two cards I'm trying out right now are these two. March of the Outerworldly Light. So what I've taken out for this is I've taken out Fatal Pushes, and I'm trying out Marches here. The reason why I've taken out Fatal Pushes, namely, was because I felt like the Prismatic ending and the Fatal Pushes were sort of overlapping in terms of handling low-level threats. And so the plus side of Fatal Push is that it's better mana, and it's cheaper to use, and it can hit anything 4 and lower, and it's instant speed. So those are like the pluses of Fatal Pushes over Prismatic. Better thing about Prismatic is it can hit basically almost any non-land permanent, which is pretty good. So that, in terms of um, versatile card selection and removal, Prismatic Ending is one of the best. You hit pretty much anything here. Fatal Push is only for creatures, but it's nice because it's instant speed, which there's a lot of like stuff you need to hit while like, I guess Ragavan, for example, you need to hit a Ragavan when it's coming at you. So that's something Prismatic Ending can't deal with, especially if the Ragavan is dashing. And so I wanted to continue playing Fatal Pushes because of Ragavan and being able to deal with it. I mean, if you're playing Subtlety, you could definitely play Subtlety and not Subtlety, sorry, Solitudes. I'm only playing 2 Solitudes, but if you're playing 4 Solitudes, I guess you should have technically um, a better advantage against Ragavan. But I hate minusing cards. I hate invoking my stuff if I can possibly avoid it. Yeah, there are times where you have no choice. You gotta invoke something. You gotta pay the cost of like force negation, solitude, subtlety. That's fine. But for me, I'd rather trade mana over card advantage. But then again, this deck does generate quite a bit of card advantage, and so sometimes invoking stuff isn't the worst thing because you do make up your advantages later on. But you do lose out on tempo when playing Prismatic because Prismatic is a 1-for-1 in terms of mana cost. You trade up on tempo with Fatal Push, but it's more narrow in its usage. So I end up just taking out the Fatal Pushes and trying out the Marches. What do I think about the Marches? From my experience so far, they've worked okay. Sometimes it's a little painful to use because, like Prismatic Ending, they're a net negative to your mana tempo. Um, but it's still a great removal card. Like I've hit like stuff that Fatal Pushes couldn't hit before, which was pretty nice. Yeah, but like I'm only playing 2 copies because I think more than 2 might be too expensive to use in the deck, especially if you have Prismatic too. It's hard to justify spending like 3 or 4 mana with either of these cards to remove um, a something on your opponent's board. So Having too many of these, I think it makes it a little bit harder to cast. But I don't know. I like the card. I haven't got a chance to use it against Urza Saga yet. But that's the main idea. Is I wanted to try to use this against Urza Saga, and the fact that it's also white, so it's my mana base is a little less rough, so I can focus more on the white side of things. But I'm still playing some black cards, and um, I think with the new new Esper charm thing that's coming out, it'll make some interesting. It'll make it more of a reason to play Esper rather than just blue white control. But yeah, so two marches. Yeah, and then just everything else here. I'm just gonna go real quick. Two dams, four counterspell, four snaps. I still really like the four snaps. Feel pretty good. Teferi. So this card's gonna be interesting when the Obscural's charm comes out in the next set. Namely because this is gonna be your main target to revive with it. So when it does come out, I'll try to see if I can find any space to play the card. But it'll be interesting just because Teferi, reviving Teferi on your opponent's turn, and that's gonna be a pretty interesting thing. We'll see how that works out. Yep, two Cosmic Guile here, four Archmage's Charm, one Cryptic Command, one Jace. Jace, alternative win condition. Cryptic Command, it's just a filler card. You can put whatever you want in here. You honestly don't even need to play this card. It's kind of expensive. I play it just because I like the looks of it. It's just some dirt in here. Yeah, I play it just because namely I like the looks and the kind of stay on theme of the deck. But yeah, it's not as strong definitely as it used to be. So I would say you could probably cut this out for something else, honestly. Two Solitudes. You could play four if you wanted to. I think in this Esper type of deck, can't really afford to play too many of these just because don't have that many white cards. I mean, we have a lot of white cards, but I don't know. Maybe if I had, if I wanted to go for it, I would just do four Solitudes. But I mean, I don't know. Not too sure about this. If it clogs up too much, I guess the other reason I wouldn't play four is because I'm playing Snapcasters. If you weren't playing Snapcasters, you could play four of these. Because Snapcaster works better with instants and spells, instant sorceries and spells versus a Solitude. So yeah. Yep. Two Hero of Dominario here, and then just my mana base hasn't changed much. I may make some changes with the new set. I'm debating a bit about adding in the Esper Trinome, but after yesterday's experience, which I'll talk about in one of my games, I don't know about doing that honestly, just because I got kind of mana screwed yesterday a little bit. Only in one particular game, but it was just unlucky. So, toss it up to luck at that point. But yeah, all right. So, in terms of side deck, not much has changed. Still like two Sanctifiers. It's just multi-purpose in terms of just acting as a blocker and graveyard hate, and hard to remove for some decks. So yeah, two of that. Rest in Peace still really good. I definitely would play a minimum of two if you're playing Azurius or any combination of white control. You should probably play Rest in Peace. Dovin's Veto. Yeah, Dovin's Veto still a good card. You could play Mystic Dispute. You can play Force of Negation also if you have any of that. I just chose to play Dovin's Veto because sometimes I just don't want my spells. I don't want my counters to be countered. So yeah, there you go. For Idrigus, it's still one of my favorite removal cards. Honestly, it's a lot of decks are running red in Modern, and helps me out Blood Moon so many times. Like my deck loses hardcore to Blood Moon, and this card outs Blood Moon, and it also outs uncounterable stuff like Titan. When they have Cavern of Souls or something like that, they cast a Titan or something like that. You just go Aethergust and send their Titan back. So yeah, I really do like Aethergust. It's been one of my favorite cards to like put three of it into my deck when I feel like counterspell is not up to par, or I feel like my removal's a bit lacking. I just shove three of these in, and yeah, they've been great every single time. Two additional Kyle's Guile. Um, yeah, I know Loris is gone from the format, but this is still putting in a lot of work. There's still Murktide floating around. There's still a lot of Living Death decks floating around, a bunch of other stuff. So, yeah, Kai's Guile is still putting in work for me. I still definitely like it. At most, I would cut down one of them maybe. Um, but so far, I still there's still plenty of games where I actually shove in two more into my main deck. But with the new Esper Charm or a Squirrel's Charm or whatever you call it that's coming out, maybe you can cut one of these to make room for that. I'll have to see. I haven't really thought about that yet. And then Kaya's Usurper, just another win condition here. On top of that, she might be interesting. Just another target for the new charm. Because I looked up all the planeswalkers that you could play with the new charm, and I understand that the new charm also works with any permanent. It could be any color permanent, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a planeswalker. Most of the time, it's going to be a planeswalker or maybe a creature or something like that. We'll see in the next coming days or so what creature or what permanent is going to work well with the new charm, and then based off of that, I might change the deck and see what's going on. So I did spend some time trying to look up, some good, 3 mana permanents to 3 color mana permanents to work with the charm, and the only other one I really found that I liked might have been either probably Ashiot. Honestly, I think Ashiot might have been pretty good. So you can, if you have Ashiot in the graveyard and you charm it, you get the Ashiot back, and they'll lose their fetching and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I thought, but I haven't really test around that theory yet. And then two subtleties. Still really like the card. Has won me a few games and actually come as a surprise to a lot of people. So yeah, and it's decent body with flying, nothing bad there. And finally, I'm just trying out one Fracturing Gust because I was noticing an uptick in the artifact decks due to Kamigawa and stuff like that. And so because of that, I decided to play a Fracturing Gust here, just to just to punish those decks. It doesn't come up that often, but it is here for that. And yeah. Alright, so that's the deck. Hopefully that didn't take too long. And I'm gonna go ahead and talk about my matches and stuff like that. And kind of show you what I sided in for those matches. Hopefully this video doesn't take too long, but I do apologize if it does. I tend to ramble a lot and digress a lot when I talk. So, but not if not, grab something to drink, sit back, and hopefully we'll learn something together. So, yeah, it was a I would say a pretty mid range sized modern tournament. Just store credit, nothing crazy or anything like that. So it's pretty casual. We had 18 players yesterday. I don't know when I'm uploading this video, so I'm doing this today, which is Tuesday. I played yesterday, so if I mention past tense and whenever I upload this video, if it's a little out of sequence, don't mind that. Okay, all right. So yeah, 18 players, 4 rounds, and I went 3-0 draw. So basically, I went undefeated up until the last round. Me and the final player decided to split the winnings rather than playing each other. So technically, we're both undefeated of the 18 players. So I guess you can say I went 4-0 just to sort of make it easier there. So I didn't really lose anything. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about what my matchups were and how I did against them. All right, sorry there. Take a sip of water. Okay, so first matchup, pretty it was against Boros Burn. So being a control player, that's already in a bad position for me. But luckily for me, I had enough practice against a lot of Boros Burn decks, so I oftentimes do relatively well with them unless they run away really early in the game and I just don't draw any removal. Then that kind of sucks. Um, like if they're just playing one or two bolts a turn or one or two creatures a turn, maybe one Swift Foot or one um, Goblin Guide or something like that. The deck is manageable. You can definitely beat the deck, especially in game one. Um, Game two might be a little bit more difficult depending on how they side against you. They might side cards that don't allow you to gain life, or cards that tick you a little bit quicker, stuff like that. And so, yeah, and if they're going first too, it kind of sucks. But yeah, so my win yesterday, I went I 2-0'd the Burn player. So game one, I went first. I get my lands start to get going. Nothing super remarkable happened game one. I just maintained control the entire time. He did put me down kind of low, but I used Kaya's Guile multiple times with the Snapcaster to kind of just keep myself in the game. On top of making a bunch of blockers, on top of stealing his creatures with Archmage Charm, and blocking with that. He had a couple of times where he had me on the ropes there, but I just went ahead and just made tokens with the Kaya or heal or force him to sacrifice. Use my Snapcasters as just blockers and bodies. Not much, yeah, like I said, not much remarkable happened. I just was able to maintain control and had a lot of removal. So I chopped it up to just him running out of steam eventually, and I just ran away with the game. Um, by the end of the game, I had Teferi, small Teferi, big Teferi on the board. I had my castles and I think Hall of the Storm Giants ready to attack. I think I had like a Snapcaster, two Kaya tokens, plus a plus the colonnade here to attack for lethal. So I did like 9 damage or 8 damage in one turn. Because I just cleared his board. Didn't let him cast. Didn't leave him with anything to really to act as a threat on my board. So yeah, game one went pretty well. So game two, for those, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about a little bit of side decking. So if you're not too interested in this part, then just go ahead and skip ahead. But yeah, so it's important to know your matchup and what cards they're playing and what cards are gonna get you value and what cards are not and what cards are too expensive. So for me, I took these out because Jace dies to Bolt, dies at virtually anything, and 4 mana is too slow for this matchup. So you want to take out the Jace. Same thing with the Mana Crypt. Like I said, or sorry, Cryptic Command, not Mana Crypt. Yeah, Cryptic Command, too slow, too expensive. I would just definitely take that out. Archmage Charms I kept in for sure. Great against negating and stealing their creatures. You can steal Goblin Guides. You can steal Swift's Foots and stuff like that. Maybe if they're playing Ragavan for some reason, or they're playing Darcy. Yeah, good card to keep in against them. Same thing with Solitudes for sure. Solitudes are a must keep. Teferi, it's a maybe. You don't have to. I end up usually keeping him because he is my win condition anyways. So I usually just keep him in there and not worry about it too much. Kaya's Guile definitely for sure. Keep you need this to clear out their board, to heal and generate tokens. It does all the modes you needed to do in this particular matchup. So it's good keep. Teferi, I would say you could potentially cut one out. Because Teferi does have a bit of weakness to an established board. If they establish their board, Teferi doesn't really do anything to solve it, especially when all their creatures have haste. It's kind of like sucky. The great thing about Teferi, it does force them to, like, if you have a Teferi stick on board and you stabilize with Teferi, then they have to play their cards during their turn. They have to bolt you on their turn. They can't really respond to your spells with a bolt or something to the face, stuff like that. So that's what Teferi is good for. But if the matchup is really aggro, really fast paced, and they have like haste and stuff, then I would just cut out Teferi, maybe play just 3 or 2 instead. But I think in this particular matchup, I ended up just keeping the 4 because I was confident in my matchup, or at least in my ability to play against them, and so I just ended up keeping that in there. Yeah, I think I kept the 4 snaps in here as bodies. Not much to say there. I think I took out 1 counter spell, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So I think I kept these 3 in here. I think I kept both dams in as removal. Definitely kept the marches in as removal, and I kept 4 prismatic ending as removal. And I think I took out these 4 right here. I took out all 4 ops. So reason why you take out the 4 ops is because of Eidolon. So if they have 1 Eidolon, okay, maybe you can do it, but it still sucks. If they have double Eidolon, this you're basically bolting yourself in the face for 4, Boros charming yourself in the face for 4 to draw a card. Not that great. I would highly recommend not playing this in against a um, in against a burn deck, because if they stabilize with Eidolon, you're gonna be in a world of pain. It sucks that a lot of our removal are 3 CMC and less. But that's just something we have to deal with. Unfortunately, like when you do this against Eidolon, you're still taking 2 damage. If you overload dam, you're okay. Teferi, Kai's Guile, all this kind of sucks to play against them, because Eidolon is just that strong against this deck. So you gotta keep an eye out for Eidolon. You gotta keep an eye out for Swift Spear if they get really really big, and you gotta keep an eye out for multiple Goblin Guides, because you can deal with 1 Goblin Guide. You can leave him on the board for a couple of times, let him fetch you some lands, but you take too many hits, then that becomes an issue there. In terms of my side deck, let's see what I think I put in. I think this is what I end up siding in here. Just these 7 cards. I got 7 for 7. I think that's what I did here. So let me explain here. So Sanctifier, definitely, it's not because of graveyard hate or anything. You just put her in as kind of a body, and so that they can't recycle lava darts and stuff like that, or like if they have like something else that uses the graveyard maybe. It's rare, but namely I put her in just to act as a body and a blocker, and they can't really remove anyway. Remove this card unless they're playing a prismatic ending or something like that. If they're Boros, they might play that and they might be able to remove the Sanctifier. But yeah, other than that, I definitely love the Aethergus. Aethergus works as removal, works as a counter spell against them. It's just like it's the perfect card against a burn deck. You're able to just deal with whatever they have on the board, or deal with whatever they're trying to cast. Most of the time, if you spin back a Swift's Foot or something like that, if they decide to keep it on top of their deck, cool. They're drawing a 1 mana card, and then it has haste, sure, but they have to be able to back it up to apply more pressure. Most people, when you spin something back, they'll just put it back to the bottom of the deck. They won't keep it. But you never know. Some people they run out of steam, and they just, if you spin something back, they'll just put it back on top of your deck and draw the same card again. And so at least you know what they're going to be playing in the upcoming turns, which is kind of nice there. Kai's Guile for the healing, same thing, sacrifice, and yeah. So not much to say there. Yeah, best my opponent 2-0, and that was game 1. Game 2, I play against Murktide. So it's a slightly different type of Murktide deck. It's a Murktide deck with Snapcaster and what's his face, the flippy guy. Damn, his name slips my mind. The creature, the one blue mana creature that flips when you reveal a instant or sorcery from the top of your deck. His name will come back in my mind a little bit later somewhere. Right now, I just can't. For some reason, can't think of his name. So, anyways, game 1, not much happened. I think he got kind of mana screwed, so it basically I think he kept a greedy hand. He held all of cantrips, which is great, but his only threat on the board was that 1 mana dude, and the old DRC. But it's bothering me that I don't know the name. I do know the card, but I'm not remembering the name right now. But anyway, so he only had that, and I guess I was okay with my mana because every turn I was able to play a land and just kind of ramp up to the point where I had 5 fairy, and he was just down so many lands and so many, trying to just play expressive, trying to play Seerum's Vision, trying to play Consider, all those cards just to get lands and stuff like that, and he just couldn't find the mana base to become a threat, and so I ran away with the game with Teferi, and he ended up scooping game one. Game two, definitely a whole different story. So um, game two, he goes pretty wild. Like I was able to let me, I guess, show you my side deck first, and then talk about what happened. So I think this was the side. I think so. I want to say this is what I put in. What did I take out here? I think I took 2 ops. And I think I do still take these out. I think I keep those in. Maybe I took these out. I know I probably took these out. And yeah, I think this is it right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is about 10 cards. Yeah. So I took out 4 Snapcasters because I'm signing Rest in Peace. So I don't particularly care about trying to reuse my grave. Took out the Dams. I know Dams are good against Murktides, but I have Kaz Guile and stuff like that to kind of deal with Murktide. Took out the Ops because taking out Snapcasters, there's really no point in playing the Op. So you can definitely cut out on the Ops. Having 2 ops means you're essentially getting 1 land kind of thing. So I kept 2 ops in here, meaning I'm still technically playing a 25 land deck. So it's just statistics wise. And I took these 2 out because they're going to be really expensive to play against a Murktide deck. So yeah, I always end up signing these 2 out a lot. I know, but I just love these cards, so I just keep them in my deck. Even though definitely you can optimize this deck to be a lot better by not playing bad cards. But yeah, so this is what I put in. Put this in to play against subtleties for sure, or any other creature-based threats. Rest in Peace to get rid of his graveyard. The same with Kaya's Guile here, or sorry, Kaya, the regular one, and then Aether Gust and stuff like that for any potential red spells like Blood Moons, Expressives, stuff like that. Same with the Kai's Guile. So in this game, it was a pretty, even though he was kind of explosive, I think he ended up being able to cast like 3 expressive alliterations or something like that, and had like a bunch of Snapcasters and stuff. He wasn't able to use his graveyard, which was nice because I did resolve a Rest in Peace. But the problem was I ended up drawing a really mana base. Like it's a workable mana base, but it was slow going second, and it was slow going against a Murktide deck. So what happened was I ended up drawing these cards in my hand. Like I think I opened them up with these 2 or something like that, and I ended up drawing a Storm Giant or Storm Giant later. And my mana base for the entire game was just so hard to play. Because I ended up opening up with this. Maybe I should have mulliganed to get a land, but I was kind of greedy. I didn't want to mulligan down the down 1 card, so I kept it and tried playing it. So it like I just didn't have some manas on certain turns. I needed that mana because these came in tap or something like that, and that kind of sucked. I guess that rarely happens, but it does happen. That's why I debated on maybe not playing the new Esper Trinome when it comes out, and just keep this just for the red mana. It has come up a few times where I prismatic for 4, so that's why I still play the red Trinome here. But definitely I still like Celestial. I still like Hall of Storm Giant. It just sucks that I drew that in that particular hand, and I was just playing really slow, and I couldn't really resolve many things as I wanted. And he had a bunch of spell pierces and mystic denial, or mystic. I forget the card. Now I'm forgetting what it is. The mystic. Oh shit! Now I don't remember what the card name is. Give me 1 second. Let me look it up real quick. Anyways, it's the the spell pierce for blue cards basically. So yeah, he had a bunch of that, and so I just couldn't like resolve the stuff I wanted to resolve, or didn't have the mana to resolve. Like I'm sure if I had enough mana, I could have probably came out on top. He played Murktide and stuff like that. I was able to get rid of it towards like the middle state of the game, like turn 6 or so, where we had 6 lands. I wasn't really drawing any fetches either, so that was an issue. And so by like turn 6 or so, he slapped down the Blood Moon when I didn't have any way of like dealing with it, and that essentially kind of cinched the game there because I just couldn't deal with Blood Moon on top of his board state and top of me not being able to draw what I needed. So yeah, I gave him game two. It was all the things that went wrong. His first game happened to me my game two. So him not being able to get the land he needed happened to me, where I couldn't get the mana base I needed. I had the colors, I just didn't have the untapped lands, and so that kind of sucked. And he had Blood Moon, so whoopie doo. I didn't see Aether Gust. I wish I saw an Aether Gust. Would have probably been able to make a comeback. I think I had like one island, and if I saw an Aether Gust, I would have been at least to spin back the Blood Moon and be able to continue playing the game like normal. But I just gave it to him. So game three was where it got interesting. I go first. I do stuff. Turn two, I try to slam down a Rest in Peace. He had one fetch land, so he fetches for a Steam Vent, I believe, and spell pierces me. I suspect that was gonna happen. Like I knew that was coming. Gonna come on. But I had to take that risk anyways. I had to see. I didn't have a counter spell or anything to anything worthwhile playing turn two. So I ended up just slapping down a Rest in Peace and trying to resolve that while he may not have a spell pierce in hand, which he did, which is fine. We traded 1-for-1 card. He's up on Temple technically, but anyways, swings back. I think I try to resolve to Fairy, gets negated. I try to do some other stuff, gets negated. So by turn 4, we had 4 mana open up. I had 2 counter spells in my hand. I think I keep drawing off of my top of my deck. He tries to resolve an Expressive. He has like 8 cards or something in his graveyard. I counterspell 1. Then he just slaps down Murktide. I counterspell the Murktide. So now I'm kind of like running out of cards. But I think I draw like Kaz Guild or an Archmage Charm or something like that to try to refill my hand. So the game goes back and forth for a little bit more. This game was definitely a lot longer. Like we were trading back and forth a lot. And then towards the late, I think he ends up casting another Murktide. I think during this game I killed a total of 3 freaking Murktides that were like plus like 5 on each, and that was a horrible experience trying to deal with all the Murktides. But time gets called. We're near the end of the match. Time gets called. We're essentially inching it out. He's still relatively healthy. I'm at maybe 9 life, maybe 7 life, 6 life left. But my card quality on my board was a lot better. His is an iffy card quality. I had a Kaya's token and I had a subtlety on board. I also had I believe a solitude in my hand also, and basically, he had a Snapcaster on board and 2 cards in hand and nothing else. And so time gets called, whatever, goes my turn. We end the game there, sort of thing. And being that it's just round 2, it's either one of us is gonna walk away with being in the top places. So he decided, so, let's compare our board state situation since it was so close, and we agreed that okay, whoever could have beat each other in the next 1 or 2 turns, we'll give it to them. So we look at each other's hand and agree that my hand was a lot better. So I had a subtlety, solitude, and a Hall of Storm Giant on the board, about to ready to attack, and The plan was for me to just cast slowly, remove the Snapcaster, and then just attack in, full on assault there if I got one more turn. All he had was a Snapcaster in his hand, and looking at his graveyard, he didn't have anything worthwhile to be able to stop that. I don't think he had yeah, I don't think he had anything in his graveyard because he banished he exiled so much of his graveyard for the 3 Murktides that he didn't have anything left to use with the Snapcaster. So we agreed, okay, if I had one more turn or even 2 more turns or whatever, I would have had the game. So he concedes to me. So that's how I get the game, game 2. So in all fairness, I would have done the same. If his board state was better than mine, I would concede to him, give him the game. No point in drawing. It's either we win, and going home, or take it all home or not. If in the early parts of the game, in the when it comes to the finals, then it's okay to split if you don't feel like playing or whatever. Then yeah, but in the early part of the game, like if you get a draw, it kind of sucks. It kind of you're playing against you're gonna be paired down, and your tiebreakers and stuff like it. They're just gonna suck for the rest of the tournament. So yeah, drawing early in the tournament kind of sucks, but it does happen. Okay, so the third matchup I was against Living Death. So I never played against Living Death. I've heard all the stuff about Living Death. I know what to kind of expect. But yeah, I don't really. It's basically like rhinos. They get their free spell. They pump out a bunch of creatures. They go ham on your face. The usual strategy. But this time, the Living Death, it's really quick, fast-paced deck that can just kill you in a few turns, and so they're more dangerous than I would say a Rhino deck, because Rhino deck is more of a grindy matchup, where Living Death is like they'll win really quickly, and if you don't have any graveyard interaction or you don't have any counter spells, you're in for a terrible, terrible time. So yeah, my opponent goes first. He does his stuff. We set up our mana. Not much happens. I think he does grief me a few times, once or twice, which is fine. So turn 4, I have four mana. I don't really have a counter spell in my hand. I know and he's gonna be up on 5 mana. I'm like, he has 4 mana open. I'm like, okay, maybe it's a counter spell, or maybe he's waiting to flash something in. I don't know. I don't really have much to play on my end. I can try to play defensive and just I had a Teferi. I think I had 2 Teferis in hand, and I know Teferi's good against living end decks because no cascade for you. So I was like, all right, well I don't have much else to do. Why don't I just go ahead and slam down the Teferi? And I slammed the Teferi. This time I'm deliberating whether I should uptick the Teferi or if I should downtick it. In hindsight, I think I should have just downticked it, knowing that he was playing basically, was it blue, black, green for the green for Charlie the Agents, and so I was like, okay, if Teferi survives, in my head for some reason at that time I thought he's gonna flash something in and just run over Teferi if I downtick Teferi down to 1 to draw a card. So I was like, okay, I'll just uptick Teferi. And I had one I think a Flooded Strand or something here. So 3 mana tap. I had Teferi, and he goes Otawara. Otawara, I think is the land. And so he Otawara was my freaking Teferi. He's like, ah, shit. In my head is like, oh yeah, it's 4 mana. He had it open the entire time. He was telegraphing it, and I just played right into it. I was expecting a counter spell or something. That's equally, I guess whether it's a counter spell or the land, I guess same result, right? So he returns the Teferi back to my hand. Then he goes Charlotte's Agent, and at this time his entire graveyard was literally filled with crap because he's been cycling. Because the first couple of turns, all he did was just cycle. He cycles Blood Rate, Street Wraith. He cycles like the Sphinx and all the other crap. Loads up his graveyard with like a bunch of blue creatures, Architect stuff. I don't know. I never really looked at the deck. I don't really know what creatures they play other than the cycling ones. So he's got like 9 creatures there. He's pretty scary, right? So he goes yeah, he goes freaking Blood Rate Elf, gets out like 7 creatures on the board. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm dead, right? But fortunately for me, they don't have haste, so I got 1 turn to deal with his whole board, or I'm just dead. You know, like I know it. Like there's nothing in my hand. I have like Solitude and stuff, but what is Solitude gonna do against 9 creatures? So I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna die. Whatever. So he architects. He gets his trigger. He architects himself. Architects me. Basically, Architect lets you look at your opponents or your deck and rearrange the cards on top of them. Okay, so I let it resolve. He ends his turn. I cracked my Polluted Delta or whatever I had here. Cracked it, fetched my land, gave him my deck to cut or whatever. Gives it back to me, and I draw my card. I draw my only, because he does grief me and stuff, so he knows what's in my hand. He knows that he can safely Starless Agent and not get punished. So he knows what's in my hand. He knows technically what was on top of my deck until I fetched. So I think, okay, fine. I fetch away whatever was on top of my deck, clear it away. I don't know what it is. Only he knew. So he knows my hand. He knew what was on my deck. He knew it was safe to just slam his board and go for lethal next turn. So in my head, it's like I got 2 cards in my deck that will save me, and maybe if he doesn't have a counter spell, if a counter spell, cool. Offer the handshake. So I draw it, like Yugi and Yu-Gi-Oh! Believe in the heart of the cards, and I drew my dam, and so I go land, overload dam, and I'm like looking at his hand. He's got 2 cards in his hand. He's looking at me. We look at each other, and he scoops up his board, puts it to the graveyard. I'm like, oh my god, that was like the top deck of the century there. I don't deserve that at all. Don't deserve that board wipe. Um, and he was just like, oh man. But yeah, so long story short, I wipe his board and I don't let anything else resolves at this point. I think I slap down there Teferi. I eventually get out big mana Teferi, and he just gives me the game. I run away with the game because there's just no way for him to come back without um, combating my board while I also have counter spells in the hand at this point. And yeah, so I think I eventually drew a Kaya's Guile too. So if he did Living Death, I would have just responded that with Kaya's Guile. So it didn't matter too much. So I took the game 1. I would say pure by luck. It was not anything skilled even, just pure luck. Ripped the dam off of my deck and got him with that. So game 2. Yeah, let's talk about the side deck in just a second here. I know this video is getting a little long, but I think it was a worthwhile game. So I think this is what I put in. I think I decided a ton of stuff for this matchup just because I knew it was a combo deck, and I knew what I was expecting to face against. So this is just my land here. So I think this is my side deck. Let me see what I took out. I think I took out like everything that I thought wasn't gonna be handy this matchup. Took out these for sure, I think. Alright. So main thing I took out was definitely 4 Prismatic Ending. So Prismatic Ending is pretty absolutely garbage in this matchup. I think I might have taken out the Outer Worldly March too, I think. Maybe. Let me see how many cards I did put in here. 10, 11. So 11 here. 4 here. Maybe this too. I think I keep in this Cryptic Command for additional counter spell. I think I took out the Jace here. Or maybe I kept in the Jace. I think I kept in the Jace. Because combo decks don't really interact with your Planeswalker, so you're kind of okay with keeping those in. Assuming you can make it to the late game. If you can't make it to the late game, well that kind of sucks. So I think this is what I did. or something like this, something along the lines of me taking out a bunch of removal and some snaps, something like this. I don't exactly remember at the moment what I took out, but I took out 11 cards or so and sided in these 11. So here's my logic for what I put into the deck. So definitely Sanctifier, because he had some black creatures and stuff like that. I wasn't too sure if Sanctifier was worth it, honestly, in this particular matchup. I think because most of his creatures were blue anyways, so this might have been a mistake on my end, not knowing what the deck did and not knowing, um, you know, what else to expect, and that was just my fault there. I think. So I think this might have been missided, but I didn't see it during the match on the game two anyway, so it didn't matter. Um, Dolan's video for sure. You need this to stop the living death. Um, and this is the for sure way to stop it. Like if you cast counterspell against living death, it's like, oh, cool, they'll counter you back or they'll force negation you or something like that. If it's your turn, so yeah, for sure. That's why I played the Dovin's video. Just like I know for sure, there's one card I wanted to stop. It's living death. You definitely rest in peace. No comment on that one. Like if you don't play rest in peace against living death, I'm not too sure what you're doing there. Um, Kyle's Gal for sure. Max out on these. So if you get your Kyle's Gal off once on them, you rip their graveyard apart. They will spend the next like 5 turns trying to build it back up, and that essentially will win you the game as a control player. If they can't establish their graveyard within the next first couple of turns, they can't apply pressure with like at least a turn, turn 3 living death or turn maybe 4 living death, then you got the game there. Subtlety for me, this was to play against Charlotte's Agent. So yeah, if they played Charlotte's Agent, I would have just remove it and not let it resolve. Not even bother countering it. Just remove it from the stack there. And then finally, Kaya. I just wanted more graveyard hate. Honestly, I was not expecting to ever minus with her. I was always expecting to just keep removing his graveyard turn after turn. If he does get to the point where that's what we're doing, that's what I put in. So game three, he goes first. I think he goes he does Griefmeath turn one, just to get rid of cards in my hand. I think I had like Kaya this one. I had 2 Kaya's Guile and like a counter spell and maybe a couple of lands here and there. I forget exactly what I had, but I think that was it. I think he rips my counter spell with the the grief. I play my land. He goes back. He plays his thing. My turn. I play another land. His turn. He rips Charlotte's Agent on turn 3. Gets a living death, and then gets back the grief. Rips another card from my hand. Okay, so I know he's trying to wither away my resources so that I won't have a way to combat his eventual big board. So it goes back and forth a little bit. I take a couple hits from Shardless. I take a couple hits from Grief, but I eventually managed to Kaya Guile, get rid of some of his stuff. Then I managed to I forget exactly how I got rid of the Grief. I think I want to say I damned it, maybe, or I may have Kaya's Guiled it, or I did something. Oh, I think I know what I did. I think I bounced it with Teferi. So I was like, YOLO, I'm gonna bounce the Grief with my Teferi back to his hand, and then I know I had another counter spell, so I was like, all right, well, he goes, he hard casts the Grief. I think I went ahead and played Archmage just to counter the Grief. I wanted to waste his turn, so like that was how I was thinking in my head. It's like, okay, I know he doesn't have too much cards in hand either, because we were just kind of trading cards and stuff like that, and he wasn't really putting too much in the graveyard. I don't think he drew any cycling cards, which was surprising. So his game plan was really slow. So I was like, all right, I'll bounce back the Grief. I drew the Offensive Fairy, so I know I've already made would get my value back even if I gave him Grief back to his hand. And then I'm going to try to go for a tempo play. So that worked out for me because he goes into Grief. I negate it, and then I go into my turn, turn 5 or whatever. I go into big Teferi, and now I'm up on tempo. So I have two Teferis he's got to deal with, and I have a counter spell in my hand, and so I feel pretty confident I can beat him if he does try to rip a living death. Game goes on for another 1 or 2 turns. At this point, though, I think I rip a couple. I do rip a Kaya's Guile on his graveyard. He didn't have too much, so I think he decides to scoop there, just because he knows at this point there was no coming back from what I had on my board, and the fact that I had I think I ended up getting Kaya too on the board. So I had 3 Planeswalker. I had Kaya, Big Fairy, Small Fairy, and that was basically it. Like there's just nothing he could really do at this point to combat my board. And my ability to just control his graveyard. Whatever he threw into the graveyard would have been exiled by Kaya. And then with Teferi on the board, small one, he wouldn't be able to cast um, his his Cascade cards. Like I think he also had Violent Outbursts in his hand, but he was never able to cast because of Teferi. So yeah, so basically the game 2 goes to me. He gives it to me, so cool. My first experience against Living Death, and yeah, it's a pretty cool deck. I do enjoy my Reanimator decks. May have to think about that one day. I do want to make Esper Reanimator, but I just haven't had the time, or I haven't had the time to go out and buy some of those cards to make the deck. Maybe next set, if they have more cool Esper cards like the Charm, I'll go ahead and give it a shot. But for now, still rocking the Esper control deck. So right now, it's game 4. Me and my opponent, we know we're the only undefeated undefeateds at this point. So we talk about it, and it's like, all right, it's late night. He's playing Hammer Time. I think Blue White Hammer Time, I think, is what he was playing, and I'm playing Control. So we're like, it's late at night. Let's just go ahead and split the winnings. It was just stored credit, so nothing crazy, and it's not like we really, we needed stored credit anyways. Like I don't need the stored credit. I don't really care too much. I'm just here to play. So we end up just playing the stored credit just because it was late night. I wouldn't mind playing the game a bit more, but it's a Monday. I have work the next morning, and I didn't want to stay out too late, so I decided, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and just split the winnings, call it a game, call it a day, and go home, grab some food before I had to sleep for work. So yeah, in I played against him once before, and I did lose against him before just because I didn't know how to play against the deck. It was I don't really have much practice against Hammer Time, so I can't say that I am Hammer Time is a confident matchup for me. It's probably one of my worst matchups. I know Blue White usually smashes Hammer Time if they get out like Chalice of the Void. Because I'm not playing Chalice, I definitely think I have a worse matchup against Hammer Time. But yeah, so I decided, all right, if we did play it out, I probably could have gotten the game, or maybe the match against him. But obviously, I think his win percentage against me is definitely a lot higher. Not like saying I wanted to split because I know I was gonna lose. I would definitely play it out. Like I don't like splitting when necessary. When not necessary, I just like just to see if I can beat the best player there. At the locals that night. So, but anyways, without digressing too much, those were my matches. I'll probably make a more extensive video on side decking in the near future. I know that I'm just talking about side decking right now as just kind of a taste for it. But yeah, what I'll do is I'll look up some meta decks that are currently going on right now, and maybe by this end of this week or something, I'll make another video being a little bit more descriptive of how I side deck, and go from there. But yeah, so yeah, that was my match, my games, and my small deck profile update, and I think that's it. That's all I got for you guys. So yeah, see you guys probably the end of the week or so, and you guys have a good one.